Welcome to Transformational Leadership, the podcast for leaders building high-performance organizations and teams. In every episode, you will hear from executives and transformation experts who've led with vision, executed under pressure, and delivered real, scalable, and impactful results. You'll hear practical insights and leadership stories from executives who've driven change, delivering transformation, and consistently winning in highly complex environments. No fluff, just frameworks, lessons, and stories from the front lines of leadership. If you're serious about building competitive impact through people, you're in the right place. Here is your host, Jeff Harnois.
Hello, and welcome to the Transformational Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Harnois. Our guest today is Jodi Brockington, the founder and CEO of Nyara Consulting, a brand and business development agency. And she's the founder of FOJ Network, a concierge-style networking and professional development community. And she's the co-founder of Venture Philanthropy Blueprint, providing a platform for small businesses to amplify community awareness and growth. Jodi is described by many as a culture futurist and a sustainability genius. And if that's not enough, Jodi has completed 3 master's degrees on top of her undergraduate degree. She's passionate about enabling others to create their own legacy. In my conversation with Jodi today, we're going to be talking about access to opportunity, where Jodi created a digital career success series, also known as DCSS, for the National Urban League, transforming an idea into what was actually needed versus what was originally requested. I know I'm going to have fun with that conversation. Then we'll jump into fragmentation into scalable impact, a pitch contest that Jodi developed, transforming an ecosystem and the model, bringing together the Urban League and 100 urban entrepreneurs. We'll then focus on networking to strategic access, where she is now a connector, driving business professionals to build a resource network, enabling real, scalable transformation to success. With that, everyone, please join me in welcoming Jodi to the stage. Jodi, so nice to see you.
Jeff, thank you for having me today.
Lovely to be here with you. You have an amazing background, and I'd love to actually spend our whole episode talking about that. But could you give us, the top line view of how you got here today?
How I got here today. Well, born and bred New Yorker, as you can see behind me. Very proud of that. I'm biracial, so I am black and white, and I consider myself to be bi-coastal in the work I do. So from here to the West Coast, where I was fortunate enough to go to college and start actual work in that state and made my way back. But my whole superpower of living in 2 worlds most of my life is understanding what people are saying and what are the questions behind the questions and the statements behind statements. That cross-cultural ties, which is where the cultural futurist comes, that people say things that maybe at that moment mean one thing, but futuristically can mean another, or have kind of come up in that sense. So kind of looking at how culture changes over time and within generations.
I love that concept. My brain is already lighting up on the concept of, what you say and how you say it and how you connect and how you engage and how you relate today may not be the same in the future and may not even be appropriate in the future. That what a fascinating concept. I also noticed that a couple of those master's degrees, you mentioned Southern California, UCLA, which is actually my birthplace. I was born at the medical center there. And USC, those were probably both really great academic experiences, I'm guessing.
They definitely had some cultural awareness and adjustments. We all go through things. UCLA, one of my first roommates was accusing me of taking her clothes, which were definitely many sizes too big. And so I had my first, I'll say, racial conflict between, Black and white folks and living situations and being thrown in, but survived. I had taught her how to actually do laundry. And she kind of turned, and so her shirt ended up in my laundry. And so, but you learn from that. And I switched roommates because I was not going to be stuck. I know how to stand up for myself. I didn't want to be stuck in a room with someone who did not think highly of me. And I ended up with a great roommate who actually pushed me to do more. And she would go home on the weekend. So it was the best roommate in the fact that as of Thursday at 4:45, when her parents picked her up, I wasn't seeing her again till Monday. So it allowed me a lot of freedom and still made me believe I had my own room.
Oh, wow, that's phenomenal. You mentioned that sort of self-representation. I think of it as self-advocacy. That's a really interesting topic for me because I work with a lot of executives who, um, in many cases, English is a second language for them. And so the cultural influences are that they're very humble. Humility by itself is a value for them. And so we don't see as much advocacy with those groups because they don't know how. And so we end up doing some work around that exactly. How do we help you promote yourself without it coming across as egotistical or bragging or boastful, but in a very factually competent and high impact manner? So that's a really interesting tie into what you were talking about.
Well, that when it also translates when you're in the workplace from a mentor versus a sponsor, right? So someone who can guide you and give you some ideas and, oh, you should try this and maybe you should say this versus the person who says it when you're not in the room, stands for what you also believe, but can represent you when you cannot represent yourself in all spaces and cases.
Did you just reference Carla Harris? Is that what you just did?
Well, I love her, but I really do believe that we've all do a lot of great things. I actually advocated to make sure with a board member at the New York Urban League when she was on the cover of Black Enterprise 2003 as the mover and shaker of money for Morgan Stanley to not give her a Women's Community Award at the Frederick Douglass dinner, but give her a Frederick Douglass Award. And it was the first award that was the catapult and the domino effect of all the greatness of awards that she already deserved, but started to then get and be more access. And I just saw her recently. She spoke at Black Enterprise Women of Power, the 20th anniversary, 2 weeks ago in Vegas. And she is still hot on her game. So I don't know if I memorized from her, but I definitely lived the same experience where I'm only here today because of what people have said about me in rooms that I was not in. And I continue to do that for others because to get in the room, access is key. And that's really, why I wanted to discuss, access and opportunities because they do make a difference.
Carla did I think she did a keynote. It was just a few minutes more than 30 minutes long, a keynote at the LinkedIn Talent Connect conference. I want to say it goes back to 2017 or 2018. And she talks exactly about that, about, what do people say when you're not in the room? And it's a really, really good framing for people who are who are aware that managing your professional reputation inside an organization is as strategically important as the job you do.
Right. And then even more so when you become self-actualized as she has, right? So she moved up the ranks. Everyone knew she worked at Morgan Stanley, but she was still Carla Harris. And so how do you manage yourself and your career and what you do, right? Inside the walls and keep that reputation, and outside, how do you keep the reputation of yourself and the company that you work for, right? Like, so it's a kind of a catch 22.
She tells a story in that same keynote where she had been trained in Wall Street and New York, and the way she describes it, these aren't her words, but the way she describes is a little bit of what I would call relational sterility. You're talking to clients, it's all business, it's very focused, you're buttoned up, you're hard nosed, and she's also a gospel singer. And at some point, she started letting that sort of slip into the conversations. And what she said was, it really, to your point, self-actualization. She's just being very real and honest and authentic. It was something she's very passionate about. I think I want to say she's got a Grammy for one of her gospel
No, and I
albums.
was going to ask you if you had the pleasure of hearing her either at a concert or sing. Okay. Well, then that's something you need to put on your to-do list or to done, or you're too done because you've done it.
It's on my list. I love that. So anyway, she was just talking about how, bringing that authentic personal bit into those conversations, how much more engaging the meetings were, how much more personal and connected they were. So again, back to what you were talking about earlier, this idea of I don't think it's vulnerability. I don't think that's the right word, but I think authenticity is really the home run there. So advocating for yourself in a very authentic way is where I would sum that up.
Well, the best way to make connections with people is when you actually learn something about them that not everyone knows or isn't in public. I often ask in interviews, what's something that's not on your LinkedIn profile and on your resume that really helps you be in the industry you're in, do the work that you do, because that's what drives you. So often, you have to give an example. So for me, I was a gymnast and I was also in this Big Apple circus. And so both having some kind of form of risk, stuff that you do alone, right? As a gymnast, I was a soloist on each apparatus, but my score kind of came together for the team. So I could still win and our team could still lose or vice versa. And also the idea of, the risk taking of being on a, trapeze or flipping in the middle of a circus, but still relying on someone to catch you if you fall, right? You have to know and trust people. So those are those skills that I got early on as a kid, flipping around and down the hallway and how to catch people's attention. But it's what drives me and keeps me going in the work that I do. Take a little risk, know who you're working for, know what to offer, and to kind of always be flexible and ready to shift when something shifts, right? So, but
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And I should stop being, surprised and impressed every time. It's like, where does this end? A gymnast and a trapeze artist? That's unbelievable and
I don't know
super
if I
cool.
became a trapeze artist. We just had to practice on that. I was definitely flip helmets.
I see. Love it. Well, let's talk about access to opportunity. This seems like a really interesting transformation story, and I'm going to be hearing it for the first time with the audience. Let's tell me more about that.
Sure. I mean, I think in most of the work I do, I look at groups and individuals, because whether or not it's a one-on-one situation or I'm working with an organization, I've noticed that there's incredible talent and people who need to help each other and do things, but they, for some reason, don't have the access. Like it's limited to get to where they need to go, or physically, or in these days via tech. Like if you don't have enough tech and you're not using AI or you're not doing something to be physically in a room or in a space for the opportunities to just show up, you have to kind of do some of the work. So when I started working with the National Urban League's career fair, part of the challenge at the time, and this is pre-COVID, was getting more people into the rooms themselves, as well as sponsors, right? So foot traffic, how many young professionals can we get in one population to come to this particular organized career fair, right? And the career fair and the conference changes cities and states every year based on the different groups and affiliates that apply for it. But every 4 years after an election year, it's in DC. So you can end up anywhere: Indiana, Ohio, Chicago. And so what I was tasked with as my challenge is, what if access wasn't tied to geography, but to intention, right? So in the league's eye, they were like, I need some more money and more sponsors and more hiring managers from these great corporations who are our partners. But those same partners were complaining that there wasn't enough foot traffic. So I heard that they needed money, right? We need more sponsorship. And I heard that, they really want these companies to walk away with the ROI that was intended, right?
Sure.
So instead of it being foot traffic that we're relying on from city to city, it made me think about how can we do this on a platform. This was long before COVID, people. So there was no Zoom. there was maybe WebEx for anyone who can remember that. And we were trying, Facebook was starting. So we would try all these things, but we brought corporate leaders we needed to kind of figure out what that was going to be like. So how do we bring these corporate leaders and their partners who are already part of the movement into the career fair space without making them come there physically? So we thought of, and I helped them think about, a digital career success series back in 2006. And we brought corporate leaders, leveraged early tech startups, entrepreneurs, and opened up career development and mentorship to people across the country and even the world if they wanted to dial in. And the shift was real because we got to produce a show that really allowed them to see what they would get if they came to the career fair. So let's just say this year it's in Chicago, and next year it's going to be in Indiana. So you live in Indiana, but you're not coming to the Chicago show. But now you got excited because they met you, Jeff, because you were one of the people I interviewed about podcasting. And they met someone else who taught them how to spruce up their LinkedIn profile. And then we would look at which sessions were the most watched, recasted, right? And had the most feedback because we always send a survey. And those would be the people that we would bring to conference that year or try our best. And this is what these companies could sponsor instead of going to the conference. So they still had access to the same 21 to 40-year-old Black professional market, really ready to go and get those jobs. And they didn't actually have to go. In addition, though, the reason why this could be adopted by the National Urban League was they were one of the early adopters of online career fairs before those were popular for some of the same purpose. So we were able to build that upon. And it still goes on today. I left as the host after about 8 years. And now Ken Johnson is the host, but he also has a lot more tools in place that weren't before. So better recordings, same story, same tools, but really shifting us as we go in and out of gig economy to where we are today with the chaos of, change and change makers.
So there were two things in that story that came up for me. The first one is really what you were doing, and you actually, I'm certain you already thought of this. What you were doing is you were conducting market research, but it wasn't called market research. You were finding out what really had the draw, what was getting the most interest in the marketplace. And the reason that that's on my mind is that then allowed you to make really good strategic decisions about guests and content and subject matter and all of that, which then in turn ensured your success of getting the foot traffic that you needed, which then in turn helped your sponsors then engage with the Urban League. It's just such an excellent story about hearing a requirement. This was the other thing that popped up for me, hearing a requirement as it was stated, but knowing that in fact, this is the way that I often think about this, Jodi. This requirement of, we need more sponsors is a symptom. The actual bigger problem or bigger opportunity or root opportunity was something beyond just we needed more sponsors, and you were able to see that and connect the dots and then ultimately build it. That's phenomenal.
No, and the National Urban League has been a great group to work with. They've been my client for quite some time because they're trying to be innovative. they're trying to do things differently with a population that continues to be mostly the same over time. So you have to kind of make what everyone needs new for that time, and they always want to be on the cutting edge and doing something that others can follow them versus being the follower. They definitely want to be the leader, and Mark Morial specifically. So the charge was there, and Wanda Jackson has been in the HR, the career services space for the National Urban League since I've been working there. And she too is all about doing things differently and making them memorable. And so I wanted her to really have that.
This is a great transformation story. Your transformation, this is one of the things that I love about transformation as sort of a space or a discipline. Your transformation literally transformed, how that organization goes out and engages with its sponsors first and its community second. And the transformation that you developed and implemented, that you had the vision for in the beginning, is still supporting their business to this day. And did you say 8 years later?
Well, the 8 years later, I did it for 8 years. It's been longer than that now, like another, 10. So it's been going, I believe 2006 or 8 till now. It still goes on.
Even better.
I mean, and in the beginning, I had to pull a lot of, this is where the FOJ network that we will talk about a little bit more, my Friends of Jodi network, came in very handy, because not only did I survey my own peers who were the ones looking for work and in that 21 to 40-year-old market, but they were the ones also doing these things that could say it from an experiential part, as well as those who were my mentors and my coaches. So, you want to hear from an executive coach? This is mine. Did you want to hear from someone who really does LinkedIn well? This is who helped me. So they were getting my curated tribe of professional friends and business partners to give them what they needed. Like, they weren't going to hear about how important your hair is from just anyone. I gave them Miko Branch from Miss Jessie's, who talked about curly hair and had a solution for it with the products that she made. And then a clothier designer, Ron Donovan, talk about, how impressionable what you wear, where you work and what you wear kind of correlate, right? Like if you work at the NFL, you better have, some kind of football gear ready for someday. If you're working at IBM, it's a little bit more conservative. If you're at Google, maybe a little bit more laid back, right? But you need to know where you are, but you also need to know what your brand is. And both of them were really branding experts who happened to fall into this dress for success space. And at one point, the whole hair thing, especially for folks of color, tends to be a bigger topic. And so I wanted them to hear straight from the people who are solving those problems to do that. And, being very conscious about male and female voices, because we do things differently, are perceived differently, to try to find a nice balance of that. And then back to the access, they wouldn't have never met these people if I didn't bring them forth, right? We have those traditional people that speak all the time that we all kind of know, but I also wanted this platform to give them access for their brands and the cultures that they were kind of creating for their businesses. So some were business owners, some worked inside of some of the businesses and companies that were partners with National Urban League, and some were just outside of that realm, but I knew that they were the voices that would resonate with our target market.
I mentioned earlier in your intro, because you mentioned to me that helping others create legacy is one of your passion points. It sounds like the legacy you're creating for yourself is pretty magnificent as well.
I hope so. I mean, I can't go most places. Even today, I was walking my dog, stopped in Starbucks, and this woman came into my face and she's like, "I know you." And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm in my own neighborhood. And maybe I do. Like, her face looked familiar. I'm like, she's a Black female. I'm a Black female. So I'm like, I always say like Urban League. And she was like, no, and then she was like, Jodi Jodi Brockington. And it turns out to be that we both are in a women of color work group for small businesses, but I've only seen her ever in a Zoom cube. Right. But it turns out that her daughter goes to school a few blocks from me. She met with a friend. They walked a few more blocks, which was closer to my house. And I happened to be walking my dog. So that happens. And even when we first started the DCSS, people knew my voice. So even if they're like, are you Jodi Brockington? I'm like, oh. So I have a lot of mentees also across the world because of some of those people will tap in. So yes, I do want to create a legacy of really great people who will also continue to help and nurture this next generation for their legacy and what's going to come, because that's the only way we will have some impact and see the change that we all want to be a part of.
Nice. Love that. Yeah, I love that. As I age, I don't know how many years of work I have left. I love what I do, but I think that the concept of legacy is on my mind, significantly more today than it was, maybe 20 years ago. And so, this segment for me is really interesting, and it's wonderful to hear other people talking about it. Yeah. Yeah, just like that, right? So let's talk about fragmentation into scalable impact. This was the pitch contest that you created, and the transformation around that.
Yeah, no, well, all these pitch contests started, I don't even know what year it was, but they were all over different groups that I was part of. The one that kind of impressed me the most, or I think sometimes it's the money giveaway, and then it's sometimes who do you really attract to come to your particular pitch contest? Like when they're very structured and it's only for tech companies, or it's only for women, or it's only for this, it kind of loses its luster. But when there's a nice mix and you get to hear all these different businesses that are starting, the ideas and the problems that they're solving are quite exciting. So I had then secured a contract with a group called 100 Urban Entrepreneurs. The founder was a Canadian, and he had brought it and combined with some folks that were in the entertainment companies and industry, and brought it to the US. And they were 100 urban entrepreneurs, but they were really looking at the next generation. So they were really looking at, young youth, I'd say high school, end of high school, early college startups. But at the same time, the Urban League under Mark Morial's new agenda, he really was stressing how important entrepreneurship needs to be part of career success, especially in the African American community. And so I was working with the Small Business Matters director at the time, Terry Clark, who now runs the New York, New Jersey Minority Supplier Diversity Council. But I had the pleasure of working with him on Small Business Matters. And he was like, oh, we should add a pitch contest, but they didn't know exactly how. I didn't know exactly how, but I love when I don't know exactly how, because then I want to figure it out. So that's part of what when I go on to a next contract and a gig, I want to learn something too. I don't want to just, be the superpower. And because I had worked with 100 urban entrepreneurs and we had gone to different schools, HBCUs, campuses to find this young talent of startups, I was like, oh, well, maybe if we partner 100 urban entrepreneurs with National Urban League, they could help fund one of these pitch contests at our next conference. And the next conference was in Boston. And so, Mark and his people, Terry and their team, and then on the 100 urban entrepreneur side, they had an agreement. And so we put this together. There was not even a room for it at the Boston conference. So we did it inside the convention hall in a big hallway, like a dome part of the hallway, and even got a sponsor, which was Coca-Cola at the time. Nice. And it continues to grow from there, but it went off really well. But everyone wants to have their own thing. And so since the National Urban League was working not only with startup entrepreneurs. Their sweet spot was more entrepreneurs 2 to 5 years out, and then those that were much more seasoned. And so they really wanted this pitch contest to fit that model. So we created the small business pitch contest instead. And our sponsors, as well as entrepreneurs that the league was already helping, became some of the judges, helped with the pitch contest success. But the shift wasn't just in the pitch, it was really in this ecosystem we built around it. And from that, they decided to also build out 13 small business matters entrepreneurship centers in some of the affiliates around the country. So you wouldn't just see the pitch contest. If the pitch contest was only at the conference, but now we had touch points, and it was a way to get other people from other cities, states to know that the Urban League was about entrepreneurship, not just jobs. That was part of job creation. And then we had these centers. And even if your city or state did not have one of the centers, you can call any of them to have them review your business plan, help you with shipping, with the partnerships with UPS and FedEx, and other accolades that came along if you just use their services, which were all free. But they had to get the word out. So it was kind of a marketing, awareness, and then funding of some of these businesses. So, and who doesn't want to give away money? Right. I love those big checks at the end, but all of these businesses are now doing really well. I stay in touch with a lot of them. And we try to bring them back as judges and to also just check in and see where they're going with their business.
You know, it's interesting because one of my favorite parts about transformation is talking about what difference the transformation made. You know, in my world, that's what I think of when I think about impact. I know lots of people are interested in the mechanics of transformation or the planning or the strategy of transformation, which are all very important. But I'm really interested in what difference did the transformation make? Did you hit your strategic goal, and what difference did that make? So do you have a success story or two to share around?
I mean, with this pitch contest specifically, there was one gentleman, Keon Davis, who had his company is Smooth and Groove. It's a smoothie company.
Okay.
But he had a truck. And so he was pitching to get enough money to put it on a truck to be mobile. All of his Smooth and Groove, all of his smoothies had song names like Heard It Through the Grapevine,
Love it.
and the other. So he would go from campus to campus, and he wanted another truck. And then he also wanted to go brick and mortar. And there's a lot more complicated story behind this, but it also, when he won our contest, it also gave him the confidence to apply for bigger pitch contests that he would also not win all, but you're keeping your brand out there. So, you know, the theme was always pitching. 100%. And that year specifically, or the year after, we also did a partnership with Shark Tank that we became the funnel for African-American candidates to be selected for Shark Tank.
Oh my goodness.
So they were going through both. So we were able to do some of that as well. But Keon continued to win pitch contests and develop his business, and is more successful today than ever. Moved from where he was to Atlanta with his family, and has now built out more and more of his brand to the point where he has cookbooks. He has, you know, done presentations for Black Enterprise, and it's just amazing, right?
Yeah.
So that's only one, but they all are doing well. They have Sessamatize. Anyway, it's a beauty brand. She's a makeup artist, but she wanted a truck so she can make it mobile and not be stuck at a place that you had to go to. And so she did that. There's all kinds of stories. There's health related solutions of certain pants to wear for circulation. There's definitely always some great food ideas, restaurant ideas, but they change every year. And what's great about it is we were not limiting the kind of business, because we know that that's diverse, but we wanted people to come up with solutions. The best businesses are those that have the solutions that can make the most impact. And for Keon, it was about health. if you're going to put something in your system, at least know what it is and know what the fruit is and how many calories and how to prepare it. He does even little sandwich demos, like what to put in, what to take out. Everyone then really connects this with the Urban League now. And more of those centers grew. We started out with 10, there's now 13, and it continues to grow.
Wow, phenomenal. What a great story. And again, the outcome and the impact of the transformation to me seems like it's got so many different legs to it, and it continues to grow. And then I think one of the other things, Jodi, that was coming up for me is this was a transformation. It was intentional. It was by design. And it just kept morphing into other transformations. That to me is magnificent to see.
Yeah, the amplification, or, as you drop one stone and all the ripples. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what we're doing now with Venture Philanthropy Blueprint, is aligning capital with execution. So impact ventures don't just exist, they actually scale.
Love it. Let's talk a little bit about this concept of networking to strategic access, and the fact that now you have an organization focusing on this connector and this connection. We touched on it a little bit, but let's dive deeper into that. You've created an organization that's driving business professionals to build essentially a resource network, which is enabling real and scalable transformation to success. Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, across my career and even myself, we're always complaining about, I'm high performing, I got all these degrees, I'm smart, I'm effective, I know a lot of people, but when it comes down to when I need something that I just don't have, where do I turn?
Yeah.
Right? Siri is not enough, right?
Right.
We can't always get that kind of access.
Right.
And so how do you do that? How do you keep that going? And that's a different problem, because networking is volume, but access is really precision. You got to really know what your target is. So I used to do, and I still do it from time to time, a strategic stalking session. So there's always someone. Let me explain, because it's I love the title, but so Jeff, whoever your favorite, most anointed podcaster is that you've not met yet, that you want to meet, like, how do you get to that person?
Yeah.
Right? Who's your Oprah in your industry? Right? And often we think it's that person, but maybe it's really, in Oprah's case, it's Gail's assistant that knows the answer to the question of what you really believe only Oprah knows, or only someone knows, right? So I built this FOJ, which is Friends of Jodi, which you are now part of. I'm anointing you live on the show.
Honored to be here.
Not as another network, but as a curated ecosystem. Because everyone's like, oh my God, you have so many people in your LinkedIn. And I'm like, I actually know them all. And if I have not met them, they are 1 degree away from someone I already know. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So let's build that curated ecosystem where it's not who do you know, it's what do you need and how quickly can we get you there. Right. Sometimes you need things right away.
Do you have a success story with this operation?
I have lots of success stories. I've connected business people to opportunities, investors, speaking platforms, partnerships, as I've already talked about some already, even lifestyle solutions. Right. So, I have curly hair. I'm a mixed chick. And it's hard to get this stuff in place, and the curls. And I would see people on the subway where I'm like, oh, I see your parent. I see the kid. Here's a business card. You might want to go here, right? So it could be as simple as that, right? You might want to try out this hairdresser, right? Or it's the idea that I'm like, oh, like I'm having an event this Saturday at MCM Soho. I am working on helping them build more people to understand their brand. But it's in honor of Women's History Month. So I am having women-owned businesses get the exposure of exposing some of their business and their products and services inside the MCM store, while MCM gets more foot traffic for people to sip and shop. And so everyone kind of comes together in one community to expand their brand, find more clients or customers, and have more people do market research, like try my juice, try my granola.
Right.
You say you want to try meditation. We're doing that in a half hour downstairs. Try it out for your first time, right? So giving people, once again, access and exposure in places and spaces that they might not have thought of, but where it's needed and necessary. So a good friend of mine started working at MCM. I had done something similar with her when she was at Talbot's. And she was like, oh my God. And we hadn't seen each other in months. We ran into each other at the Harlem Studio Museum for the new members, like a, soiree and a tour. And the rest is history. This is my third event. I did one in the middle of last month or the beginning of this month. And then for Black History Month, we did one that was focused on their new black and white spring and summer line, right? To bring awareness to the New York Urban League and the New York Black MBA, of which I'm part of those ecosystems, right? So, but that's what I mean. Like, so there's not a thing. It's just, oh, you want what? And I listen. And once again, when they say what they want, I hear what they want, but how they're going to get there, they're not sure.
And it feels more and less like formal networking and you do call it more concierge type of a relationship, but it is really more about sort of making the connection but filling a need.
Correct.
Am I describing that how you envisioned it or how you think about it?
Yeah, and I feel like there's the generic things that all business needs, right? More marketing, more awareness, more customers or clients, depending on if you're a product or service, right? But it's how you get them and where you get them from. And so from early on, before all these platforms and technology, a lot of it was traditional product placement. Like if I told you these glasses are from C Eyewear, SEE Eyewear, right? The lipstick I'm wearing is from Glossier. So now those are the things that you tag in your posts or do whatever, but someone had to get them in front of me to try it, right? So like the Mikey, you were going to try it first here, right? But I want to be the person who either introduces, connects, or makes that happen, There's like little things that make that all work. And I want to, the FOJ, it's like why FOJ and the Venture Philanthropy Blueprint are so aligned, because both are about really closing gaps of access or exposure to potential instead of not someday, but now in real time. Like, let's do it. Like, let's not wait. And we all talk about failure. It doesn't always work. And sometimes not enough people really show up, or you didn't hit the RSVP numbers you wanted. But I'm always like, whoever showed up was supposed to be there. And whoever didn't show up, they'll show up at the next one because someone will talk about it,
Interesting. My definition of failure is you didn't try.
Well, there's, success comes from, failure after failure, but just not giving up. And that's definitely something that, pushed me into entrepreneurship was John Hope Bryant and Operation Hope. And that was one of his things that, most successful people don't want to hand out. They want to hand up, right? They want you to just help me along or give me that small investment or give me some advice or listen, versus no one needs so much that they can't do. But, I'll take some extra investment for sure.
This isn't the same, but a parallel for me is, I can't count on luck, but I'll take it when it's available.
There you go.
Right. And kind of the same thing with that hand up. I'm going to do the work, and I, will absolutely appreciate that hand up when it comes. But I have to be careful to not rely on it, because I want to be the, sort of the king of my own destiny. And so that resiliency and tenacity and the willingness, I think this maybe is the key, Jodi, The willingness to try and fail and learn and then try again is one of the things that I see most common in successful folks.
Oh, and you have to. I mean, I know everyone's always like, oh, as a Black female, not only being Black, but being female, do you ever think that that's held you back or reason why you didn't get a job or didn't get a contract? And I'm like, of course, but I can't let that stop me. Like, that's giving in or giving an excuse. It was the reason why in the beginning of LinkedIn, no one put their picture up. They're like, I don't want anyone to know I'm Black, or I don't want anyone to know I'm a female. And I'm like, well, if that's the reason why they're not hiring you, you might not want to work there, right? Like, that might be a sign or a significant reason to not do that, right?
Isn't that the best conclusion of all? If that's going on in that organization, you don't want to be there.
Let it go. Let it lie, right?
Yeah, that's not where you should be. Go find some place where you can be home. And I think you used the word tribe earlier. I'm a big fan of that. And go find your people. And for me, it's not racial or gender or anything else. Go find the people who are going to help you succeed, who, have success in their blood as well, and have the scars to prove it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, nice. Jodi, I have to tell you, I've enjoyed the conversation.
No, same
Lots
here.
of, lots of good, rich stuff in there. I want to ask you a couple of questions that I ask all my guests. And I mentioned this previously. Have fun with these if you can or if you want to. I'm very interested in what was the best piece of advice that you received and didn't take?
I've got so much advice in life, and that I didn't take. So much I didn't take. But I really want to talk about my dad. He was always about safety and security, very traditional, get married, get a job, get all the benefits, and get a pension if it's that kind of job. And so every time I would start a new job or a new adventure, as I would call them, you know, because I started contracting early, I probably have worked more years for myself. What you kill is what you eat, than actually having a 9 to 5 first and 15th paycheck. But because of that, I would take a job and my dad would ask me, like, well, what are you doing? And I would try to explain what I was doing, which made no sense to him because it wasn't doctor, lawyer, or teacher that he understood. And not that he was one of those things either, but he was like, so, but then he would come to some of the events, right? He'd meet Magic Johnson because I was working on his foundation. He would meet, whoever, Derek Jeter and his family, because I worked on his Jeter's Leaders when I was working at the New York Urban League, right? So then he'd feel comfortable, like, oh, I'm hobnobbing with people that other people know. He still had no idea what I was doing. But every time I would work for someone as a contractor, a lot of times they'd want to hire me. They're like, oh, Jodi, we'll hire you full time. I'm like, yeah, no, I started this and someone else can take this program over. I want to do something new. But in this particular case, in some cases, I'm like, oh, I really do love you, Jeff. And I want to work in this podcasting studio for the rest of my life. But then 6 months down the line, I'm like, okay, I'm tired. Like, this is still cool, but I want to do something else. So every time I hit that crossroad, before I hit the crossroad, my dad's always like, take the job, take the job. And when I did, sometimes I didn't like leaving in 6 months, right? But I had no problem leaving. And or I would not take it and I would go further or get something else and not no longer work where I was working. But in most cases, everyone I've worked for has called me back to do something else, or 10 years later, or 5 months later. And so to me, that was my growth. And I know that at most places, there are ceilings that have been created, either culturally or gender wise. And then, I worked a lot in nonprofit where some of the funding would also just be taken away. And it wasn't that I was doing a bad job. It was like, this job is over. So I got used to reinventing myself. But it was very hard for my dad to see me. He saw it as suffering, and I was having the time of my life. But the lesson learned in that, and why it's something I wish I had taken more heart to, is I think I could have, I'll put it in quotes, suffered longer in some regular jobs, a little longer to have had a better nest egg now, maybe, or to just really understand things. But it is what it is, and I still love my life as it is. But sometimes now, because of that advice, when other people offer me an opportunity to speak up for others who are like staying in a job that's not happy or doing things, that's when I hear him most. When other people also offering me contracts that don't make sense, like this money is not moneying. I can't pay my rent with this. I can't even go on this trip you want me to go and do some work on and pay for my dog care. And like, so it makes me still kind of, okay, let me really evaluate this whole thing. This is what you're going to pay me. This is how much time, right? So his voice still stays with me because sometimes I think I should have maybe chosen the job over the adventure. And I remember at one point, although my parents were divorced, they both helped me leave the job that I loved the most because they were like, okay, it's not healthy for you anymore. You're not making the money you wanted. You're not getting this. So my mother helped me write my resignation letter, and my dad literally handed me 6 months of living expenses. He's like, you will not have to do anything, but you need to leave here. Right. So, when people rally around you because they know and they're watching from the outside and you're only experiencing it from yours. So I think from my dad's point of view of the safety versus the risk. Um, but I'm happy that they allowed me to be a better risk taker because I had that cushion, and not everyone has that.
I love that conclusion, and I love that takeaway. And the truth is, parents want better and more for their kids, and so
Always.
their advice often comes from that place. But in reality, to your point, that actually probably didn't fit very well.
No, not at all. So, it is what it is, but,
Well, since we're talking about advice, if someone were newer in coming into your world, what you do for a living, and that's actually hard to pin down because you got
I
so
would just
many
sum it up
things.
as consulting. Yeah.
Okay, let's call it consulting in general. What advice would you give them if you had the opportunity to only give one piece of advice that you'd be really sure would contribute to their success? What would that be?
Not to burn bridges, as we've all been told, because you just never know who's going to end up in circles. You don't have to love someone. You can even, really have a lot of hatred towards a thing, a person, a product. Like, I don't smoke. I've never had a cigarette. I will never do anything with that kind of brand. But you never know what they might fund, right? They could fund something about healthy tobacco that does something, right? So you never know when something's going to circle back. And even, when leaving an organization, I'm not trying to leave not being able to come back if I wanted. So it's kind of like family. If you still have parents who will let you come home, then you've done good with your family, right? Like, because there might be that time that you need them more than you need something else. And even though you moved and you told them, I don't want to live under your roof, they'll take you back. It's the same thing in business. It doesn't matter. My mentees now might be my bosses later, or the people who give me my contract, and how I treated them and how I helped them will matter when they're making decisions. I still want to be thought positively in a room. So that burning bridges thing, keep everyone an ally.
I love this. This is for younger people and for anybody new in consulting for sure. This may very well be the best piece of advice that I've heard on this podcast.
Yeah. And I was going to say for the younger folks, when I talk about don't burn bridges, same thing about unfriending people on social and deleting parts of things. You just never know who you're going to need. And if you can call upon someone at that right time, or they're the one in the room, it's really a nice feeling. Also, when you just haven't seen anyone in a while and then you run into someone who you've helped or they've helped you, it's phenomenal. And even people who you think have done you wrong, you still have to put yourself in the other person's shoes.
You can disengage without canceling.
There you go. And that cancellation is like, because you just never know. Like I said, right now, too, in the workforce, there are 23-year-olds who are running more companies than 63-year-olds. So you also need to know how to communicate with these folks and not piss them off and not say some of the things you might say to your peer who might be a little bit older, or to your own child, right? When they can be, if I had children, they should probably be about that age. But, it's that kind of thing.
Okay, last question. When when you think about your peer group, other seasoned consultants, seasoned and successful consultants, what piece of wisdom would you give to them? Something that's a cornerstone or a foundation or a fundamental, could be a value, could be, operational advice, could be anything, strategic thinking. What's one thing that has sort of been a catalyst for you and your success?
I think a catalyst in my success has always been on the cutting edge, always stretching into the new thing. Like, so being in Generation X, very proudfully, being a translator, not thinking about where we are today is where we're going to be forever. So if there's the new technology, a new way to write, a new tool to use, you don't have to have the latest phone. But if you're in an industry like marketing, if you didn't hop onto social media, you're now antiquated. You can't move forward in your industry. So whatever it is for you, that you need to stay always learning and the bigger part of that is really be passionate about what you do. Like what I do, I almost do for free, I feel like, and my friends will tell you I do for free, and I do a lot of it for free and volunteer, but it's because I live it. And I want people, that's really my big push, and all the work I do is I want people to be happy with their success and the choices that they've made for their lives personally and professionally.
Hmm.
You live the lifestyle that you've really grown up to do and that you believe in. So if you're out of alignment on any of those things, it will show up.
Yeah.
It will show up when you don't show up the way you want to be.
This one, the lifelong learning. This is one that's come up a few times in this podcast. It's one of my own personal values as well.
That's good.
I feel like when you feel like everything, you probably should just step away because you're probably done. But that resonates with me on a really large scale. That continuous learning, continue to challenge. There was a more subtle connection there that you were talking about, which is really the advancement of technology and not letting it get away from you, especially if it has something to do with the business that you're in, even though it's non-productive from the perspective of it's not revenue generating, it's not client servicing. I put that in the category of doing work on your business versus working in your business, right? That idea of staying up to speed with the latest innovation, to work on your business is something that's really important. The second thing you said that just sort of is still ringing in my head is I, and I've never heard anyone say that in this conversation either, which is I give it away all the time. I'm very fortunate to have clients who are willing to pay, very well for my services and what I do and what my organization does. But gosh, if somebody stopped me on the street, I would I would give them the same content, the same level, the same quality of information. I absolutely would just give it away, in those kinds of scenarios. And it's because I'm so passionate about what I do and the value that it can bring and the transformation that it can enable. So yeah, I love the fact that you said that. I don't think I've heard that before from others.
Well, we're all capitalists somewhere, but there is also a fine line of some balance, right? Like, I'm not here today by myself. There's a lot of people who have poured into me, from gymnastics coach, ballet teachers, parents, my relatives, my sister. Like, there's things that you need in your life that, you also need to give away because people have been giving, right? So you can't give, you can't get.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's a book out there. One of my favorite authors is a guy named Patrick Lencioni. He wrote The Five Dysfunctions. He also wrote a book called Getting Naked, and it's very
Getting
much
Naked
about,
is one of my faves. So
is that right? Yeah. So for our listening audience who may not be familiar, it is really about giving it away. He tells the story in a parable form in a consulting environment. And it really is about, give your value away if you really want to, engage customers and ultimately be able to charge a premium. So that's a philosophy when I read it, it's like, this is exactly how I think about it too.
yeah, and I was going to say the two books that still, well, there's a new book, but the first one of books that still navigates a lot of my networking is Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. And I felt like he put into a book a long time ago all the things that I do in my networking power. And I was like, oh my God, you're like my Italian brother, separated at birth. And then I was lucky enough to meet Linda Clemens, who is a mentor of mine. And I would also say a sponsor, and Muse. But she just came out with a new book called Hush, and she's a body language expert, but she's able to use it for sales, right? Like, how do you like, and also she can tell you what time you should sit down with your boss when you're asking for a raise, right? Like, and should you be dating that person? So body language, since it's 96% of your communication, is really important. And so from those two things of, like I said, when people say, oh, I want this, and I know what they're saying, but I'm also reading body language, and I don't want them to read mine, which is like, in my soul, I know I'm rolling my eyes, like, that's not really what I understand what you want, but that's not what you need. Like, so from those two perspectives of books, so from Never Eat Alone to Hush, which is really her statement is, you don't have to say anything for me to know all about you. um, are things that really guide communication, and then what you do with that, and then how you give it back in a nice package of really what they want and need. And you might have to modify it and change it and tweak it a few times because they listen a little differently. Oh, and you hear it a little differently. When you come to that center where it's the trifecta of what the ROI is, what the vision is, and then execute, it is very powerful. And that's what really creates these legacy ideas and programs that can continue to serve with just a small tweak every so often to change with how society and the impact that you want at the end to be.
Beautiful. Well said. Jodi, if people wanted to get in touch with you, is LinkedIn a good place to find you?
I think honestly, the best place to connect with me is through the two ecosystems I built, which is the Friends of Jodi FOJ Network. So it's just FOJ.network. That's the website. And VPB, Venture Philanthropy Blueprint. So it's VPB.one, VPB.one. We're no longer using comms. We're trying to make sure that our, emails say what they are, or at least the website. And, LinkedIn is always the best. I am the only Jodi with an I Brockington on earth. And if you meet another, don't tell me. Because I'll have to find her or him because it is a unisex name. But the idea is my stepfather continues to do research online and continues to tell me, there's other Jodis, there's definitely other Brockingtons, but there's only one Jodi Brockington.
Love it. Love it. Jodi, thank you so much for joining us today. It was delightful.
No, thank you for having me, Jeff. Transformation is deep.
It sure is. And obviously a topic that I'm passionate about. And I'm so grateful that you came and shared your experiences with us here today.
Well, I'm going to find time to make it reciprocal. I don't know what you really need yet, Jeff. I've been listening, but I'm going to figure it out.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Jodi.
Maybe I'll have you on my podcast.
I would love to be a guest. I'll see you there.
The Transformational Leadership Podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes vision, action, diagnostics, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, be sure to let us know in the comments. We'd love you to join the conversation and help us transform the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are transforming organizations, leaders, and teams. In the meantime, be sure to like, subscribe, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.